Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. A lot to talk about. There's a lot of work being done by our government on the weekends now. It's a big shift from the Biden years where, what was it, Jim, 6-5 that he was working instead of 24/7?
Friday morning, it was pretty much clear that the president was done. They're, leaving to Delaware, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. No, the frustrating thing is the question of whether our listeners hear this. It's entirely possible everything we talk about will be overtaken by events. That's how quickly things are moving on a variety of fronts.
It's certainly possible. I think most, if not all, of the good martini will hold. So let's start there. Late last week, Secretary of State Marco Rubio making his first foreign trip, this one to Panama, to talk about a couple of things. First of all, the Panama Canal, the influence of China on the Panama Canal, as well as illegal immigration. We hear all the time about all these people coming up through the Darien Gap and in Panama and so forth. And so obviously they're a key player in the process of all these people coming eventually to our border. And so results from the very first trip here. This is Fox News. Brett Baer is the one with the report here. We'll have more details in just a second, but here's the overview.
President Trump's foreign policy bearing fruit on other fronts. Panama now pledging to end a key development deal with China on the Panama Canal. The reversal coming following Trump's tough talk and a visit from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He spoke moments ago on working with the Central American nation to stem illegal immigration.
Recognize that many of the people who seek mass migration are often victims and victimized along the way. It's not good for anyone. The only people who benefit from mass migration are traffickers. And so this is a program that shows how cooperating with our strong allies here in Panama can help to stem the flow by creating a disincentive, by sending a clear message that if you come and you come irregularly, you may be stopped and you may be returned to your country of origin.
Jose Raul Molino, the Panamanian president, says that he will not give up sovereignty over the canal. That's Trump's ultimate goal there, but he will not renew a 2017 Memorandum of Understanding to join China's Belt and Road Global Development Initiative. This is where China goes around and spends a ton of money on infrastructure and then basically holds these countries hostage over time because they can't possibly pay the bill. And then, of course, late last week, we also had Ric Grenell going down to Venezuela, accomplishing two things, getting, I think, 6 hostages back that I didn't even know were being held there. And then also Venezuela allegedly agreeing to take back all of the illegals we're going to be sending there. And so a little bit more on Latin America in just a second here in our Good Martini. But what do you make of the developments on those two fronts?
Well, first of all, Greg, did I hear our new Secretary of State correctly? Our strong allies here in Panama? That's not really the tone I've been seeing from the president on Truth Social, but I'm very glad to hear that Panama is good, strong allies once again. Look, the Belt and Road Initiative is every bit as sinister as you would suspect, in the sense that always hi, we're from China. We would like to build all kinds of infrastructure for you. And this is going to help your roads, your bridges, your ports, all that. It's going to be a great deal for you. And very often, a lot of third world countries, mostly over in the Eastern Hemisphere, but Panama was the first Western country to take the deal. Well, obviously, everything gets built using Chinese supplies. Everything gets built using, a lot of cases, Chinese workers. Everything is built to Chinese specifications, which might make you a little bit nervous. And then also, now you're operating, all your telecoms infrastructure, that's all built with back doors for the Chinese to get into it and all that stuff. That basically, this is a very quiet, subtle influence operation that generally works out very well for the elected, the people who are in charge of that third world country, but who are generally, effectively selling off their country's infrastructure to control of the Chinese. And yes, you are now a client state in the eyes of the Chinese after this. You have gotten the benefits of the infrastructure, but now you're in a subordinate role to them, and they expect you to play ball with them. Unsurprisingly, the West does not like this one bit and sees this as a long-term threat. This is why them establishing this kind of relationship with the Panamanians was a threat. It is good to see that Panama, the first Western country to enter the Belt and Road Initiative, is also the first country to leave the Belt and Road Initiative. Look, I got various grievances and gripes with the Trump administration's nascent foreign policy, but this is a good one. This is standing up to China the way we should, and it sounds like I don't know whether this is directly a Godfather type reference of we'll make them an offer they couldn't refuse, but Marco Rubio put an offer on the table. It sounds like the Panamanians, weighed the upsides and the downsides. And lo and behold, now they are our strong allies here in Panama once again.
Well, we were going to do whatever it took to take back the canal if they didn't at least take that step. So this
is the easy way. This is the easy way. Everybody's happy.
So basically, we tell you what we want. If you don't give it to us, we say a lot of things we don't like about you. And then once you agree to at least some of it, then we're buddies again. That's kind of how this foreign policy works.
Might be a recurring pattern in our foreign policy as we get to our next martini there.
Yes, exactly. But kind of splitting up our what was going to be our second martini, the president's making some progress with these tariffs on Mexico. There's going to be a pause now. The president's speaking with both Justin Trudeau of Canada and Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico today. Allegedly, there's going to be another call with Trudeau later this afternoon, but Trump just tweeting out or truthing out or wherever he posted this. I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the U.S. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal immigrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for 1 month period, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a quote-unquote deal. So, Jim, as we're going to talk about in the second martini, things are not going this well with Canada, at least as of the moment. But this is kind of reminiscent of what Trump did in his first administration, where he got Mexico to get tougher on the border, agree to play ball with the Remain in Mexico policy. So if they follow through on this, this is a win, and hopefully we can avoid some of the trade back and forth.
Yeah, I'll be very curious. I want to see more details on what those 10,000 troops are going to be doing. Most of the fentanyl that comes up into the U.S. through Mexico comes in through ports of entry. And it's just common sense that you can, a lot more on a car or a van or a truck or a boat than you can by carrying it while trying to go through the middle of nowhere with one, in a backpack or something like that. So the question, will they be inspecting cars, trucks, boats, stuff like that? Will that be slowing trade between the two countries? Will they be manning the, relatively under-patrolled stretches of the Mexican side of the border? I'd be curious about what they actually do. There are two schools of thoughts about what Trump wants when he talks about tariffs. Sometimes, certainly, he talks about the idea that he believes tariffs are good in and of themselves and should be embraced. Trade wars are easy to win, as he famously said in the first one. And then there's a school of thought that says, actually, he doesn't mean any of this stuff, and that this is basically a negotiating tactic, that basically he will threaten really terrible tariffs, and then once you come to him with some sort of policy concession, he will declare victory. Now, this is only a 1 month put off of the tariffs that were supposed to go into effect tomorrow. We will see if this shakes out, how this shakes out and whether this is sufficient to keep this off. But considering the price hikes that everybody was going to see if a 25% tariff went into effect, because for most goods coming in from both Mexico and Canada under U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, negotiated under Trump, signed into law under Trump, and touted by President Trump as the best trade deal ever, it was mostly either at 0 or less than 1% for everything coming in between. And now we've just said, no, we don't believe that anymore. We're going to put a 25% tariff on your stuff. So maybe I'm foreshadowing some of my discussion in the next martini. But all in all, south of the border, it's generally good news. But stay tuned, and hopefully none of this is overtaken by events by the time listeners hear this.
Yes, preliminary good news coming out of Mexico. But this is well-established good news. Omaha Steaks. They are America's original butcher with more than 100 years of family-owned expertise in delivering the world's best steak experience. Jim and I have both experienced the awesomeness of Omaha Steaks. The steaks are always fantastic cuts. They're USDA certified tender. We've talked about that before, so you're always getting a great cut of meat, so you don't have to do the crazy hold it up to the light, see how much fat you see there at the grocery store. But every thing I've ever gotten, the steaks, the burgers, they're just amazing from Omaha Steaks. And there's so much more that you get to decide what is in the box. And the current offer is when you visit omahasteaks.com/3ml, you get 12 free burgers and free shipping for the rest of the life of your prescription, plus an extra 10% off today and on every subsequent subscription shipment. And so the new Omaha Steaks subscription plan gives you commitment-free flexibility with the ability to skip a shipment, swap selections, change your frequency, or just cancel anytime. Inflation-proof your orders. So make life easier by subscribing to the best. Subscribe to Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com/3ml and get 12 free burgers and free shipping for the life of your subscription, plus an extra 10% off today and on every subsequent subscription shipment. omahasteaks.com/3ml. All right, Jim, on to the subject of today's Morning Jolt, and it's very clear you've studied this very carefully over the weekend, and some of the impact of what we're already seeing between the United States and Canada. This back and forth seems a little more intense, a little more hostile than anything we saw with Mexico, perhaps because it's a little bit more of an intense trading relationship for starters. But Trump and Trudeau have gone back and forth. Trump wants 25% tariffs on Canada. Trudeau responding with about $150 billion in tariffs as well. You've even got the conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, obviously saying, we're Canada first. We got to fight back against this. And so potentially making life a lot more complicated for his efforts to build a conservative government in Canada over the next several months here and win an election, obviously, in the meantime. So, Jim, you've kind of broken through the strategy of the United States here, as you can see it, as well as Canada trying to punish red states in particular. And so what's the impact immediately and long term if there's not some sort of resolution like we might be seeing with Mexico?
Well, first of all, Greg, I was hoping this was all going to be averted, as in the case with Mexico, and that when we were talking about controversial trade issues, we'd be talking about the fact that Luka Doncic is a Los Angeles Laker now. But no, unfortunately. Well, by the way, for anybody who didn't pay attention to the sports news, yes, that happened this weekend. The second most controversial thing to happen in trade, the first most one was this one on Canada, which Saturday morning, Trudeau said we're going to institute our own retaliatory tariffs. And apparently, as of Sunday morning, I don't know whether this says something about Premier Ford over in Ontario, but the first thing they decided to go after was liquor. And they're taking American whiskeys and I don't know if that's just like that's the first good that came to mind or whether they felt like it was important and symbolic. I would imagine, for example, the Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell would be very concerned about the price of bourbon and whiskey in Canada and all the other things. And there various other countries have said, well, when we do this, we're going to aim for the products that are exported from red states and ones that are most important for Trump and the Republican Party. It's kind of ominous to see. You know, I mentioned in today's Morning Jolt, Tonka trucks are probably going to go up significant price because they're made in China. Now, maybe your kid's not into Tonka trunks and you're fine with it. The Midwest tends to rely on Canadian crude to produce gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, et cetera, et cetera. You're probably going to see oil go from about $63 a barrel to $80 a barrel, which means you're probably going to see prices at the pump going up 20 to 50 cents a gallon. The state that probably hit the most by that is Wisconsin. Hey, it's not like Wisconsin is really important in the Electoral College or anything like that. Maybe in the next couple of days we get some sort of deal, as we saw, some postponement of these tariffs. But really, for Canada, they just put them into place. Like, they took the American whiskeys off the shelf Sunday morning. They're already in effect, which is going to lead to higher costs. And when I say tariffs are inflationary, you can say, "Oh, Jim, you never Trump ninny." You don't take it from me. Take it from Scott Bessent, who's now Trump's Treasury Secretary, who wrote a year ago pointing out that tariffs are inflationary. I know it's like, oh, the foreign country pays it. No, they don't. The countries that are importing the goods from somewhere pass the charges on to consumers, and it makes stuff more expensive. Now, again, as we discussed in the last segment, maybe this is just a negotiating tactic. Apparently, also there's an argument that they believe Canada is not strict enough with its immigration enforcement. I'm also hearing arguments about fentanyl coming in from Canada. I'm sure it happens. Apparently, like less than 1% of the fentanyl comes in from the United States. Now, again, we're talking about the stuff that you find. I suppose it's conceivable that we're not tracking or not catching a lot of stuff coming in from there. But generally, no, trade wars are not easy to win. They're not quick and easy to do, and they generally end up costing consumers all across the board. And Greg, was inflation a big issue in that last election? Right? I mean, you could argue that this, immigration was a big deal. No two ways about that. Chaos overseas. There were a bunch of issues that drove Trump to the Oval Office a second time. But I think you could say inflation and cost of living were very big factors, and that Trump was elected to get people to feel like, hey, things are affordable again. Starting a trade war with three of our biggest trade partners is not a way to do it. And when you say this, you hear people say, well, Jim, we got to do something about fentanyl. Totally agree. Jim, we got to do something about illegal immigration. I totally agree. I don't think this gets you where you want to go. Again, if getting 10,000 Mexican troops on the job is what you think it's going to take to do it, great, then you've got your win. But remember, this is only a 1 month reprieve from these things here. Put out what you want Canada to do and see what it is. Now, maybe Trump and Trudeau are supposed to talk at 3 o'clock Eastern today. Maybe something in that conversation comes along. Maybe Trump is in this state where he just wants to see a concession, and then he gets to declare victory. So we'll see what happens. But this is not the stock market. Initially it was going to be down 600 points. It's rebounded some. I suspect that's a reaction to the Mexican news, and understand at least one part of that is not going to be it. Also, you mentioned the way the Canadians are. There's nothing to stir up Canadian nationalism more than the sense that they're getting picked on by the United States. Also, why are we hitting Canada with 25% tariffs and China with 10% tariffs? I am much more sympathetic to the argument about tariffs on China. And I just would point out, if I asked, any listener, Canada, Mexico, China, I want you to rank them in which country we are closest to in our values and our policies, and which ones we are most distant from in our values and our policies. I assume you'd rank them Canada's closest, then Mexico, then China. Well, we've got a 25% on, the toughest one is on Canada. The reprieve is on Mexico in the middle, and the 10% tariff, which at one point on the campaign trail, Trump was talking about 60%, the lowest tariff is on China. That makes absolutely no sense and is a sign that there's no logic to any of this.
Yeah, well, Trump has said, assuming these go forward, that there would be some short-term pain. I don't know how much of an inflation push we would necessarily see. But as we learned from the last administration, when there is a jump in inflation, even if the increase after that tends to ebb, which means the prices are still going up, you're never actually recovering from that initial inflation, they don't forgive you real quick.
I was going to say, Americans are very laid back about pain. They're all, government's making stuff at the store, it's more expensive. That's fine. We'll be cool with it.
All right. Well, let's talk about something better than that, because your business, hopefully you're not going to be overly affected by these tariffs if they go forward. But if they do, it's another sign that you just don't know what's coming. But the best way to be ready for whatever comes to your small business is to have the tools in place to make it run smoothly. And for more than 38,000 businesses, they have future-proofed their operations with NetSuite by Oracle, the leading cloud ERP platform. It integrates key business functions like accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one seamless system.
With a unified business management suite, NetSuite provides one source of real-time data. This gives you complete visibility and control and enables you to make quick, informed decisions. You can gain real-time insights and forecasting to make proactive, data-driven decisions with actionable data at your fingertips. You can anticipate trends and respond faster to opportunities.
Yeah, I talk to small business leaders and consultants all the time, and they say you got to take the tools and use the tools that are available to take care of the stuff that has to be done that will also free you up to do what you do best. Let these tools do the work for you. No better place to do it than NetSuite by Oracle. In addition to that, they will let you download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/martini. That guide is free to you at netsuite.com/martini. That's netsuite.com/martini. All right, Jim, we talked briefly on Friday about the ridiculous forum or debate or whatever you want to call it at Georgetown University for the candidates to lead the Democratic National Committee into this next election cycle. It was a whole lot of identity politics, which we got more of over the weekend. There were interruptions and basically people thinking Kamala Harris lost because of misogyny and racism and all that kind of stuff. But now we have a new chairman, elected on the first ballot, mind you, and not the person Nancy Pelosi wanted, which is kind of interesting. There are also 3 vice chairs to the Democratic National Committee, and one of them is David Hogg. Yeah, the kid from Parkland High School, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, who became famous in the wake of the school shooting there, became a huge gun control advocate and so forth. And so a lot of people on the right are dunking because the Democrats have decided to go with celebrity more than maybe people with the ability to organize or fundraise and that sort of thing. Jim, I don't think it's the best choice for the Democrats, but I will caution the Republicans, because every few years we get a party assuming that because it did well in the last election, it could never possibly lose again. Think Democrats in 2008, Republicans in 2004, Democrats in 2020. Republicans find themselves here again. You got to perform once you get elected. And so don't assume that just because you think the other side scored an own goal here, that it's not going to work. But if they could have picked anybody worse than David Hogg, I'm not sure who it could have been.
No, Greta, maybe. I remember talking to a Republican congressional staffer after Republicans had lost control of the House. And I said, so how's life? And he said, well, now we're throwing the grenades instead of catching them. Yes, it's a lot easier to be in the minority. And you're basically saying, hey, look at all this stuff that's screwed up. It's the majority's fault. And that's life as the opposition party. And that's one of the reasons I think midterm elections generally go bad for the president's party. You get elected on this great burst of excitement and high expectations. And then after 2 years, you have not yet immunized the eschaton. You have not brought nirvana to earth. People are disappointed and they vote for the opposition party. We were talking about this last week, and I said there's like 150 members of the DNC. It's closer to 450. But if you're wondering why did they elect this guy, Ken Martin, and why did they think that David Hogg was one of the three best options they had to be a vice president, look at who ends up having a voice in this decision. The 400 some members are each state party chair. Also the highest ranking officer of another gender of each recognized state Democratic Party. Now, another gender. So the good news is if you have two guys and a gender fluid, you're covered. You don't need a woman. That's good enough. That's all you need. But also, not just the states, of course, but Guam, Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Democratic leader in the Senate, you get a vote. Democratic leader in the House, you get a vote. So Schumer and Jeffries, you're set. You get to vote too. Whoever's the governor, who's the head of the Democratic Governors Association, and again, two additional governors, but one must be another gender. So if we have any transgender governors, they're counted in there too. Don't worry. Also, same deal is in effect for Democratic Mayors Association, Young Democrats of America, National Democratic County Officials, Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, Democratic Municipal Officials, National Federation of Democratic Women, College Democrats of America, Democratic State Treasurers Association, Democratic Attorneys General Association, National Democratic Ethnic Coordinating Committee, that doesn't sound Orwellian at all, National Democratic Seniors Coordinating Council, High School Democrats of America, get 3, and Democrats abroad. Now, if you're wondering, why did this group not feel that the Democratic Party needed a sweeping change after the debacle of the 2024 elections? Because they're all the people who are running the Democratic Party. None of them wanted to vote for any candidate. Said, yes, we stink. We absolutely fumbled the ball. We were terrible at this. We had billions of dollars in fundraising, and we completely fell flat on our face. No, they just wanted to hear a message of, we came this close. We don't have to change at all. We're good enough. We're smart enough. Doggone it, people like us. No, Al Franken was not running. But so as a result, of course they weren't interested in change. They're the people in charge. Nobody who's voting for this wanted to vote for a candidate who would have a message of, we have completely failed. We need to tear this down. It's a rebuilding year, and we need to build it up from the floorboards. Oh, by the way, I checked. This past cycle, the Democratic National Committee raised $652 million. That's a lot. And you look at how they did, not just the presidential race, not just the Senate races. House, to their credit, they're close. And I believe when Stefanik steps down, they're going to be down to a 1-seat majority. And New York Democrats are dragging their feet on scheduling the special election to replace her. State legislative seats, gubernatorial seats, Democrats really just can't point to anything. That $652 million is separate from the billion and change that the Biden/Harris campaign was able to run on. So they had just a ton of money. They had nothing to show for it. So if you're a Democratic donor, this is your answer? This guy who was running it up in Minnesota, and David Hogg? David Hogg, who believes the NRA is a terrorist organization. The Second Amendment does not protect an individual right to that. And recently was talking about how he doesn't want to have kids because the environment's going to, we're all going to die from climate change. You can't fix an organization that does not want to be fixed. And right now, there's no indication that anybody at the Democratic National Committee wants to believe that they have to change it. In their mind, based on their decision-making, they had a great 2024 and can look forward to many more years like that. Yeah, this should have been our good martini.
Yeah, I would agree with David Hogg. If you're that mentally messed up over climate change, you probably shouldn't procreate. But that's a whole different question. By the way, the new DNC chairman, not the vice chair, the chairman is from Minnesota. So his crowning achievement, basically, Jim, is getting Tim Walz in office.
Yeah. All things considered, if you're looking for states where they have not lost a lot of important races, Minnesota is that case. Now, as we point out, Harris-Walz did worse than Biden-Harris did. But again, I think that's the Walz discount. I think that the moment you put him on, you're hurting your chances to win in a state like Minnesota. They're the voters who know him best.
Exactly. And he may have lost the state house. I don't know how that actually turned out.
They did not. Special election went the way for the Democrats, but yeah.
Okay, so then Hog-Tied or whatever. But well, that's a whole other topic for another time. But we'll see what happens with the Trump-Trudeau phone call this afternoon. And we'll have plenty to talk about, whether it's that or something else tomorrow. So, Jim, have a good one. See you then.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.